The quantum drive of the Stellar Exploration Council's research vessel hummed with barely contained energy as it decelerated from faster-than-light travel. Captain Lyra Shen watched the holographic display with a mixture of professional detachment and growing curiosity. Countless missions had taught her that first impressions could be deceiving, but something about this solar system felt different. Initial sensor sweeps revealed a relatively unremarkable star surrounded by 8 planetary bodies. The third planet from the star immediately caught her attention. Preliminary atmospheric scans suggested a complex ecosystem, but it was the electromagnetic signatures that truly sparked her interest. Unlike the standard radiation patterns of most developing civilizations, this planet pulsed with a chaotic, almost living network of communications. "Preliminary analysis complete," announced Zornak, the ship's primary data analyst. His crystalline exoskeleton shifted colors as data streams cascaded across his neural interface. "The third planet demonstrates technological capabilities that defy our initial classification parameters." Lyra leaned forward, her 3-fingered hand hovering over the holographic interface. The planet's surface resolved into a detailed map, revealing intricate networks of urban centers, communication grids, and infrastructure that seemed to breathe and change even as they watched. "Impossible," muttered Dr. Krell, the expedition's xenobiologist. His tentacle-like appendages twisted in a gesture of profound confusion. "These communication patterns suggest a level of interconnectivity that should be centuries beyond their apparent technological development." The ship's communication systems crackled to life with a barrage of signals. Unlike the typical orderly transmissions of most developing species, these human communications were a cacophony of different frequencies, languages, and formats. They seemed to overlap, interrupt, and reconstruct themselves in real time. A living, breathing information ecosystem. "They're not just communicating," Lyra observed, her translator struggling to parse the multiple simultaneous signal strings. "They're creating and destroying communication networks faster than our systems can analyze them." A junior researcher named Elin gasped as another set of data streams appeared. "Look at their technological infrastructure. They're simultaneously developing multiple competing technologies, discarding some, refining others. It's like watching an evolutionary process in real time." The planet below seemed to pulse with an almost sentient energy. Urban centers sprawled and contracted. Communication networks flared and dimmed. Technological systems appeared and disappeared with bewildering rapidity. It was as if the entire planetary civilization was a single adaptive organism constantly reinventing itself. Zornak's analysis programs began to overheat, unable to maintain consistent predictive models. "Their technological and social systems defy standard categorization," he reported, a note of excitement breaking through his typically clinical tone. "They don't follow any known developmental pattern." Captain Shen felt a chill run down her spine. First contact protocols existed for a reason, but everything about this planet suggested that traditional approaches would be useless. Humans were something entirely unexpected, a species that didn't just adapt to their environment, but seemed to constantly reshape both themselves and the world around them. "Prepare a preliminary contact report," she commanded. "But be warned, nothing about these humans is going to be simple." Dr. Krell's research facility buzzed with an electric tension of scientific anticipation. Holographic displays surrounded him, each one projecting increasingly complex models of human biological systems. What had begun as a routine xenobiological analysis had transformed into the most perplexing research project in the Stellar Confederation's history. The first anomaly appeared in the cellular regeneration data. Human cells demonstrated a flexibility that defied every known biological principle. Where most species had rigid cellular structures that responded slowly to environmental changes, human cells appeared to be in a constant state of adaptive flux. They didn't just repair damage. They actively learned from it, restructuring themselves with an intelligence that bordered on the miraculous. "This is impossible," Dr. Krell muttered, his multi-lens eyes focusing on a particularly bizarre genetic sequence. A sample of human skin cells, exposed to a range of environmental stressors, showed remarkable transformation capabilities. Radiation that would destroy most biological systems triggered a cascade of adaptive responses in human cells. His primary research assistant, a biosynthetic named Area, adjusted the holographic display. "The cellular memory is extraordinary," she observed. "Each stress event creates a permanent biological record. It's as if their entire physiological history is encoded into their genetic structure." Blood samples proved even more fascinating. Human immune systems didn't just fight pathogens. They created elaborate defensive strategies that evolved in real time. Where other species might develop antibodies over generations, humans seemed to generate complex immune responses within hours or days. Each exposure became a learning experience, with the body creating increasingly sophisticated defense mechanisms. The neural plasticity was perhaps the most shocking discovery. Human brains demonstrated an ability to reorganize themselves that made traditional neural networks look primitive by comparison. Neural pathways didn't just adapt, they seemed to anticipate potential challenges, creating new connections before they were even necessary. Dr. Krell pulled up a comparative chart of neural adaptability across known sentient species. The human data point stood out like a beacon, so far beyond the other species that it almost appeared to be an error in the data collection. "They're not just adapting," Area whispered, her synthesized voice carrying a note of genuine awe. "They're essentially redesigning themselves with each new experience." Genetic analysis revealed another layer of complexity. Human DNA contained what could only be described as adaptive markers, genetic sequences that seemed primed to activate under specific environmental pressures. It was as if their very genetic code was a dynamic system rather than a fixed blueprint. A series of experimental simulations demonstrated the full extent of human biological potential. Cells exposed to extreme conditions didn't just survive. They transformed. Radiation, temperature variations, chemical exposures that should have been instantly fatal became opportunities for biological innovation. Dr. Krell realized they were looking at something far beyond a simple biological system. Humans weren't just a species. They were a living, breathing technology of adaptation. Each cell, each neural connection, each genetic sequence told a story of continuous reinvention. "We're going to need to completely rewrite our understanding of biological potential," he announced to the research team. The holographic displays around him continued to pulse with the intricate, ever-changing patterns of human biological complexity. The universe, it seemed, had been hiding an extraordinary secret, and humans were nothing short of a biological marvel waiting to be understood. The simulation chamber hummed with barely contained energy. Junior strategist Vex watched the holographic display, his chromatophoric skin shifting through shades of nervous anticipation. What had begun as a standard tactical assessment had devolved into something far more complex and bewildering. The scenario was elegantly simple on the surface: a resource-limited environment with multiple competing objectives. Previous simulations with other species had always followed predictable patterns. Alien civilizations typically approached such challenges with rigid, hierarchical decision-making processes. Conflict resolution usually meant direct confrontation or absolute resource allocation. Humans were different. Completely, utterly different. The first indication of their unusual approach came within moments of the simulation's initiation, where other species would immediately begin calculating optimal resource extraction. The human team started by sharing information. Not just sharing, they were actively redesigning the entire problem framework. "Look at that," muttered Dr. Saran, the lead simulation analyst. Her tentacle-like appendages twisted in a gesture of profound confusion. "They're not solving the problem. They're transforming the problem itself." A holographic display showed multiple human team members working simultaneously, yet not in any traditional collaborative model. Some team members appeared to be deliberately introducing complications, while others worked to find innovative solutions. It was less a strategy and more a continuous, dynamic reimagining of potential outcomes. Vex leaned closer. The human team had somehow identified 3 additional resource opportunities that weren't part of the original simulation parameters. They weren't just thinking outside the box, they were reconstructing the box in real time. Communication patterns defied every known strategic model. Team members interrupted each other, built upon partial ideas, and seemed to communicate on multiple levels simultaneously. Verbal communication intertwined with subtle body language, technological annotations, and what appeared to be almost intuitive understanding. "They're not following any standard decision-making protocol," Dr. Saran observed. Her analysis algorithms were beginning to overheat, unable to maintain consistent predictive models. "It's like they're playing an entirely different game than the one we designed." The simulation reached a critical junction point where most species would resort to conflict. The human team instead began a process that could only be described as collective problem reimagining. They didn't compete, they collaborated in a way that seemed to expand the very definition of collaboration. Resources that should have been scarce became abundant through creative reallocation. Potential conflict points transformed into opportunities for mutual advancement. Every challenge became a chance for innovative solution finding. Vex felt a chill run down his neural pathways. This wasn't just a different approach to strategy. This was an entirely new way of conceptualizing challenge and opportunity. The final moments of the simulation left the observation team in stunned silence. The human team had not only solved the original challenge, but had created 3 additional collaborative opportunities that extended far beyond the initial parameters. "Recalibrate the simulation," Vex commanded, his voice barely a whisper. "And then run it again. I need to understand how they do this." The universe, it seemed, had been hiding a remarkable secret. Humans weren't just a species, they were a living, breathing demonstration of strategic potential. The planet Solara 9 was the graveyard of exploratory dreams, a hellscape of toxic atmospheres, extreme gravitational variances, and radiation levels that would obliterate most known biological systems. The Stellar Exploration Council had long considered it an impossible environment, a planetary challenge that defied all known survival parameters. When the human exploration team requested permission to conduct a research mission, the Council's initial response was dismissive, then outright prohibitive, then, begrudgingly, curious. Commander Elena Rodriguez checked her team's environmental suits one final time. The suit itself was a marvel of human engineering, a living, adaptive system that was more akin to a symbiotic organism than traditional protective gear. Her team of 6 represented a cross-section of human adaptability: a biochemist, 2 engineers, a geologist, a medical specialist, and a systems analyst. The initial descent proved challenging. Solara 9's atmosphere was a corrosive blend of methane, sulfuric compounds, and radiation-charged particles that would strip conventional materials to their base components within minutes. The human landing module, however, seemed to breathe and shift, its outer shell adapting in real time to the environmental challenges. "Preliminary readings are stabilizing," reported Dr. Marcus Chen, the team's biochemist. His voice remained calm, almost casual, despite being surrounded by an environment that should have been instantly fatal. "Suit systems are compensating faster than our predictive model suggested." The observation team aboard the orbital research station watched in growing disbelief. Standard protocols demanded immediate retreat. The environment of Solara 9 was beyond any known survival parameters. Yet the human team continued their methodical exploration, their protective systems seeming to learn and adapt with each passing moment. Radiation levels that should have been instantly lethal were being managed through some kind of dynamic cellular protection. The team's suits didn't just block radiation, they appeared to be converting it, transforming potentially destructive energy into some form of usable resource. "They're not just surviving," muttered Dr. Klin, the lead cynobiological researcher. "They're studying the environment while simultaneously adapting to it." Hour after hour passed. Where previous exploration attempts had ended in total system failure within minutes, the human team continued their research. They collected samples, conducted geological surveys, and mapped environmental conditions with an almost casual efficiency. The suits themselves were changing. What had begun as advanced protective gear was now something entirely different, a living, breathing interface between human biology and the most hostile environment imaginable. Commander Rodriguez's voice came through the communication systems, steady and focused. "We're detecting some interesting energy conversion patterns in the planet's lower atmospheric layers. Preparing secondary research probe." The observation team exchanged glances of disbelief. This wasn't just exploration. This was a fundamental reimagining of what survival could mean. As the human team continued their mission, one thing became abundantly clear. They weren't just exploring an impossible environment. They were transforming the very concept of what was possible. Solara 9 had met its match, and humanity was just getting started. The Galactic Technology Preservation Center had seen countless species' technological achievements. Massive archive chambers housed millennia of scientific innovations from across known space, but nothing could have prepared the researchers for what humans were about to demonstrate. Dr. Aria Nakamura stood before the International Research Consortium, her holographic presentation flickering to life. She represented a collaborative human team that had been granted access to a cache of advanced alien technologies that had confounded the most brilliant minds of multiple civilizations for generations. "We don't just understand technology," she began, her voice calm and measured. "We reimagine it." The first demonstration involved a quantum communication array that had remained an unsolved puzzle for 3 different galactic civilizations. Previous attempts to decode its systems had resulted in spectacular failures. Some research teams had lost entire research stations in their attempts to unlock its secrets. The human team approached the problem differently. Instead of trying to understand the technology through existing paradigms, they began by questioning the fundamental assumptions about communication itself. What emerged was not just a solution, but a complete reimagining of the quantum communication concept. Within weeks, they had not only decoded the array, but developed 3 entirely new communication methodologies that expanded its potential application by orders of magnitude. The original alien technology was transformed, its limitations stripped away, its potential exponentially increased. "Look at the adaptation pattern," whispered Dr. Krell, the xenobiological researcher who had studied human systems. His multifaceted eyes couldn't look away from the holographic displays. The human approach was less about understanding technology and more about engaging with it as a living, evolving system. The next demonstration was even more shocking. A series of medical nanification technologies that had been considered theoretical by most galactic civilizations were not just realized but fundamentally reimagined. Where previous approaches had been limited and fragile, the human team created adaptive nanosystems that could respond to biological environments with unprecedented complexity. Dr. Nakamura's presentation continued. Each technological system they touched seemed to transform. Energy production technologies became more efficient. Communication systems became more intuitive. Medical technologies became more responsive. The research consortium watched in a mixture of horror and fascination. This wasn't just technological innovation. This was a fundamental reimagining of what technology could be. "They don't see technology as a static system," Dr. Krell observed to his colleague. "They see it as a living, breathing ecosystem of potential." The final presentation left the entire consortium in stunned silence. The human team had taken a collection of seemingly incompatible technological systems and created an entirely new technological framework. It wasn't just an improvement. It was a complete transformation of technological understanding. As the presentation concluded, one thing became abundantly clear. Humans were not just another technological species. They were technological innovators who saw potential where others saw limitations. The universe of technological understanding would never be the same again. The galactic diplomatic nexus had witnessed countless interspecies negotiations, centuries of carefully constructed protocols. Translation matrices and diplomatic frameworks defined every interaction. But nothing could have prepared them for humanity's approach to collaboration. Ambassador Zaral of the Creole Confederation watched the human delegation with a mixture of confusion and growing fascination. This was no ordinary diplomatic meeting. It was a living, breathing demonstration of collaborative potential that defied every known diplomatic model. The conference room itself seemed to transform as the human team entered. Where previous delegations had relied on rigid hierarchical structures, the humans moved with a fluid, almost organic interconnectedness. They didn't just communicate, they seemed to exist in a continuous state of collaborative thinking. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the lead human representative, began the session in a way that immediately challenged every diplomatic expectation. Instead of presenting a formal position, she opened with a series of questions, not just to the other delegations, but to everyone in the room. "We're not here to negotiate," she explained, her voice calm and inclusive. "We're here to understand and create something together that none of us could achieve alone." The translation system struggled to capture the nuance of her approach. It wasn't just about finding common ground. It was about continuously reimagining the very concept of ground itself. Each human team member seemed to play a different role in the collaborative process. One would introduce a complex concept, another would provide contextual depth, while a third would help bridge potential misunderstandings. Their communication was less a linear process and more a three-dimensional, constantly evolving dialogue. Ambassador Kryn of the Voth Collective leaned closer to Zaral. "They're not following any diplomatic protocol I've ever seen," he whispered. "It's like they're creating an entirely new framework of interaction in real time." The most shocking moment came when a seemingly intractable conflict emerged. Where previous diplomatic encounters would have resulted in breakdown or confrontation, the human team did something unprecedented. They began to reframe the conflict itself, identifying underlying needs and potential collaborative opportunities that no one had previously considered. Dr. Rodriguez's team didn't just solve problems. They transformed the very nature of the problems themselves. Cultural differences became opportunities for mutual understanding. Technological disparities became chances for shared innovation. Potential conflicts became platforms for collective growth. "We're not competing," Dr. Rodriguez explained during a critical moment of negotiation. "We're expanding our collective potential." The diplomatic records would later struggle to categorize what happened in that room. It wasn't negotiation in any traditional sense. It was a living demonstration of a fundamentally different approach to interaction. As the session concluded, the other delegations found themselves not just with a potential agreement, but with an entirely new way of conceptualizing collaboration. The humans had done more than bridge differences. They had demonstrated that differences themselves could be a source of extraordinary potential. The universe of diplomatic understanding would never be the same again. The Central Council chamber of the Stellar Confederation fell silent. Holographic displays flickered with data streams that challenged everything they thought they knew about intelligent life. What had begun as a routine assessment of a newly discovered species had transformed into the most profound existential discussion in galactic history. High Counselor Vren stood at the central platform, his tentacle-like appendages moving with uncharacteristic agitation. The comprehensive report on human potential lay before them, a document that would reshape the fundamental understanding of sentient existence. "We are faced with a species that does not conform to any existing model of evolutionary development," Vren began. His voice carried a weight of both scientific precision and growing wonder. "Humans are not just another species to be categorized. They are a living demonstration of potential itself." The report was comprehensive. Biological studies showed humans possessed an adaptive capacity that defied conventional understanding. Their cellular structures learned and transformed with each environmental interaction. Where most species develop defensive mechanisms over generations, humans seem to do so in real time. Technological assessments were equally stunning. The human approach to innovation was less about incremental improvement and more about fundamental reimagination. They didn't just understand alien technologies. They transformed them, creating entirely new paradigms of technological thinking. Dr. Krell, the lead xenobiological researcher, presented his findings. Each slide demonstrated another layer of human extraordinary potential. Their neural networks showed a plasticity that bordered on the miraculous. Their immune systems didn't just defend. They learned and evolved with unprecedented speed. They are not limited by their current state, Dr. Krell explained. For humans, existence is a continuous process of becoming. The diplomatic records told an equally compelling story. Where most species approached interactions with rigid protocols, humans created collaborative frameworks that transformed potential conflicts into opportunities for mutual growth. They didn't just communicate, they reimagined the very concept of communication. Counselor Arya, the youngest member of the High Council, leaned forward. "We are witnessing the emergence of a species that doesn't just adapt to challenges," she observed. They transform the nature of challenges themselves. The strategic implications were profound. Humans represented something entirely new, a species that was less a fixed biological entity and more a dynamic system of potential. They didn't just survive in environments. They reshaped those environments through their very existence. The final section of the report was the most provocative. Projective models suggested that human potential was not just significant, it was potentially transformative on a galactic scale. Their approach to technology, biology, and interaction suggested a fundamentally different way of conceptualizing existence. "We cannot contain them," Vren concluded, "nor should we attempt to. Humans are not a species to be managed. They are a force of potential that will reshape our understanding of what is possible." The holographic displays pulsed with data, each stream telling a story of extraordinary potential. The Stellar Confederation had discovered something far more significant than a new species. They had discovered the future itself. The Galactic Archive of Sentient Development stood as a testament to millennia of scientific understanding. Countless species had been cataloged, studied, and classified. But nothing in its vast repositories could have prepared the archivists for the comprehensive study of humanity. Dr. Lyra Chen, the lead sinosociological researcher, stood before a holographic display that pulsed with the intricate patterns of human existence. What had begun as a scientific investigation had transformed into something far more profound, a complete reimagining of what sentience could mean. "Humans are not just a species," she began her final report. "They are a living demonstration of potential itself." The holographic display shifted, showing layers of human development that defied every known evolutionary model. Their biological systems were not static. Their technological progress was not linear. Their social structures were not rigid. Everything about humans suggested a fundamental approach to existence that was dynamic, adaptive, and continuously transformative. Biological studies revealed a species that didn't just adapt to environments, they actively reshaped them. Their cellular structures learned with each interaction. Their neural networks created new pathways faster than any known species could comprehend. Where most civilizations developed defensive mechanisms over generations, humans seemed to do so in moments. Technological assessments were equally remarkable. Human innovation was less about incremental improvement and more about fundamental reimagination. They didn't just understand existing technologies. They transformed them, creating entirely new paradigms of technological thinking that challenged the very concept of technological development. Diplomatic records told a story of unprecedented collaborative potential. Where most species approached interactions with rigid protocols, humans created frameworks that transformed potential conflicts into opportunities for mutual growth. They didn't just communicate, they reimagined the very concept of communication. Dr. Krell, the xenobiological researcher who had first studied human potential, added his insights. "They are not limited by their current state," he explained. "For humans, existence is a continuous process of becoming." The most profound revelation came from understanding their approach to challenges. Humans didn't see obstacles, they saw opportunities for transformation. Every limitation was a chance for innovation. Every conflict was a potential for collaborative growth. Every unknown was an invitation to explore and understand. The Galactic Archive began to rewrite its fundamental classifications. Humans couldn't be contained within existing understandings of sentient development. They were something entirely new, a species that was less a fixed biological entity and more a dynamic system of potential. We are witnessing the emergence of a new form of existence, Dr. Chen concluded. Her voice carried the weight of a profound scientific understanding. Humans are not just another species in the galactic catalog. They are a force that will reshape our understanding of what is possible. The holographic display pulsed with energy, each stream of data telling a story of extraordinary potential. Humanity represented more than a species. They were a living demonstration of the universe's capacity for continuous transformation. In the vast expanse of cosmic existence, humans had become something truly extraordinary, the ultimate predators of limitation, the hunters of the impossible. The universe watched and learned.